My name is Emily. I am currently 43 years old. My husband, John, who was the same age as me, passed away from a heart attack 2 years ago. His departure was truly sad. We as a couple were not blessed with children. It was a long and painful situation. There are times when I felt guilty because John, who loved children, couldn't have won. When I expressed my feelings of inferiority, he firmly taught me, even if we don't have children, we can live happily. It's fine if it's just the two of us having fun together. From then on, we as a couple decided to strengthen our bond and share happy moments. Despite that, a change came to our lives. Just when we thought things were looking up, I experienced the loss of my beloved husband and was enveloped in loneliness. In this harsh reality, I ended up living alone under the same roof with his mother, with whom I often clashed. We lived together. John's father was now around due to their divorce. The fact that our home was a two-family dwelling was the only saving grace. However, she started to frequently visit, possibly because she missed her deceased son. I felt concerned by my mother-in-law, who was domineering and often made sly remarks of being against you being with my son from the start. "What do you mean by that?" I asked. "It's because he married a woman like you that John died." "You should pay for it," she said. "You've told me this multiple times, but are you suggesting that I am to blame?" I replied. "He probably got sick because you couldn't manage his diet. I bet your seasoning was too rich. The fact that he gained weight after marriage proves it," she continued. "It's true that John gained weight after our marriage, but he always said the food was delicious and ate it with joy every day. John has a kind soul. He would accept it even if the food wasn't good without complaining," I defended. "If you had been more attentive to his health, this wouldn't have happened," she insisted. These words, certainly told to me by my mother-in-law before John's funeral 2 years ago, were a huge shock. She made it seem like John's illness and passing were my fault. Those words were extremely painful for me. Even if it wasn't true, being told the same thing every day affected me mentally, making it a very difficult time. For my mother-in-law, Joe must have been the most important presence she could imagine. How painful the sudden and too early departure of her beloved son must have been. I could understand her inability to control her emotions. However, her attacks on me escalated day by day, and I never doubted that something like that would happen at the time. "Because of you, my precious son is no longer here. Were you aiming for his insurance money from the start?" she accused. "That's just not true. We as a couple wanted children and were working hard on it, even visiting hospitals. The idea of aiming for insurance money is ridiculous," I refuted. "Every day without John is unbearable for me. I can't possibly act like you soon, can I? Why can you say such cruel things? It would have been better if you were gone instead. Why did Joe have to go through this?" I pleaded. "These words are too much. I can't see my son anymore. What would John think if he heard what you just said? Blaming me won't bring John back. Joe was a calm and admirable son. He worked so hard. Why did he have to meet such an end? It would have been better if you were gone instead," she lamented. "There's a limit to everything. There are things you can and cannot say," I reminded her. "I'm just talking to myself. I'm just saying what I've been thinking. It has nothing to do with you," she dismissed. "In the end, what do you want to say?" I asked. "Move out," she demanded. "Why should I move out? Living with you makes me feel like going crazy. I won't say tomorrow, but please leave this house as soon as possible. As of John's passing, the ownership of this house should be mine," I asserted. "Now that John is gone, you think the insurance money and the house are all yours, right? You're unbelievable. I didn't know that there is insurance money involved." When she found out about the insurance payment after his death, it seems to raise suspicions in her mind. She appeared to believe that I had caused John's death to get the house and insurance money, and no matter how much I tried to explain, she wouldn't understand. I fell at my limit with the situation. Living with her was becoming increasingly difficult, and my days were mentally taxing. Here's what happened the next day. "You must be living comfortably without a home look and with a lot of insurance money coming in, not even having to work. Is that why you came here today to say such things?" "No, it's such a tricky way to respond. I can't stand the constant night remarks. I understand that you're grieving over John, but it's not fair to take it out on me. I too miss him terribly and feel lonely. Really, don't make me laugh. With a house and money, isn't everything just perfect for you playing the good wife act or you? I don't want to hear such things. We struggled with not being blessed with children, but I loved John and always hoped for us to share many happy moments together. It's impressive how you can say such things with all the freedom, money, and everything going your way. Isn't like just perfect? That's so cruel. If I could exchange the money and house to have John back, I would do it in a heartbeat. Oh, so you're saying you don't need the insurance money then? Why would you even say that? If you don't need it, then also have it, right? This money is the last gift John left for me thinking of my future after he's gone. I want to cherish the sentiment. What a shameless woman you are. At this point, I felt it was detrimental for both of us to continue living together. So I mustered the courage to make a proposal I have been contemplating for a while. Can we end this lifestyle? What do you mean? Every day we argue, and it's just hard on both of us. I think it's difficult to continue living together. That would be best. Please find a place and move out soon. You're the one who should move out. This house is under my name. I can't believe you're trying to kick me out. You're even worse than I thought. The house is too big for me alone. I'm considering selling it once, then settle down. Plus, properties around here seem to sell for a good price. Just when I thought about what you'd suggest next, it's about money again. How much more do you need to be satisfied? If you're thinking of selling, you should just give it to me. Living alone, this house will be too big for you as well, and maintaining it, including property taxes, could be a burden. I can help you find an apartment. Or should I pay rent when I can live here? If you're planning to sell, you should give it to me. I believe the rent for an apartment would be more affordable than maintaining the whole house. I can't afford to pay rent every month. I will help with the rent. If that's the case, that's fine. I'm glad to be freed from living with you. I always thought it would be the worst to be with you till the end. Promise me financial assistance. All right then, let's start looking for an apartment soon. So we decided to live separately. Mother-in-law seems to be struggling financially, so I intended to help her with the apartment fees. Our relationship is complicated, but she is the mother of my beloved husband, John. I want to support her as much as I can. Around the time I started looking for her new apartment, I suddenly fell ill. The diagnosis was cerebral hemorrhage. Luckily, it wasn't life-threatening. Including my recuperation period, I spent 2 months in the hospital. During my stay, mother-in-law never visited me. My parents and sister took turns caring for me. Thanks to their support, I could return to almost my regular daily life with only slight residual symptoms. And just like that, my 2-month hospital stay flew by, and the day of my discharge arrived. I ordinarily intended to return to my parents' house for a while, but when I went home to get my belongings, I was met with a shocking scene. What, the house is gone? What happened? I stood there in disbelief. Mother-in-law appeared as if she had been waiting for me. Congratulations on your discharge. I didn't expect you to come back looking so well. There are barely any lingering effects, and I can return to my daily life. Well, that's good to hear. I do not disagree with you coming back so healthy. More importantly, what happened to the house while I was hospitalized? About that, I sold it for about $150,000. What do you mean? So you sold that without consulting me? I had a friend who wanted to live around here. Her husband works nearby, and they're in a hurry to find a place, so I just sold it. Selling it without even telling me is unacceptable. It's not a big deal. Right after you were hospitalized, I got this offer. I thought even if you survived, you'd probably have difficulties living normally and might end up in a facility. So I made a decision on my own. Don't be mad. I can't believe it. But thanks to me finding a buyer, we got $150,000 from selling the house, unbelievably, while I was in the hospital. Mother-in-law sold the house without asking me. Their acquaintance had always wanted the land around my house, and mother-in-law took it upon herself to conduct a private transaction. Are you planning to sell someone's house without consulting them and then keep the money for yourself? The house was originally under John's name, right? That's true, but I don't think it's any of your business. Anything that belongs to my son John is mine. You interpret everything in your favor, but that's not how it works. What do you mean? When John passed away, the house title changed to my name. So what? Selling a house without the owner's consent is almost criminal, you know. Please don't call me a criminal. Who would you think you'd be able to live a normal life after hearing about the cerebral hemorrhage? That doesn't mean you can just sell it. Why are you making such a scary face? Do you think you'd win in court? How about splitting expected to $50,000 so $75,000 each? It's not about the money. Then why are you so angry? Why I was hospitalized. She sold our house on her own and used the money to buy a condo for herself. Coincidentally, a condo next to our house was on sale for about $75,000, and she lives there now. Moreover, my belongings were placed in the new home. When I had my cerebral hemorrhage, she seems to have doubted my condition was serious and made various decisions ahead of time. During these 2 months, I decided to tell the self-centered woman the truth. The house is no longer under my name. What do you mean? I was in the process of selling the house while I was hospitalized. So what? Because of the good location, it was quickly decided. I was supposed to handle the procedures after I got discharged, but I've already sold it, so it's too late. You should cancel it right away. It's my house, so I don't have any reason to cancel. Please explain the situation to your acquaintance and refund the $150,000. What are you talking about? I've already bought a condo, so I can only return half of it. Then you'll have to sell the apartment you're living in now to refund the money, won't you? My clients also seem to be planning on demolishing the house, so it's convenient. I also have to move forward with the procedures. So please refund the money soon. Wait a minute, we're not done talking yet. I'm thinking of returning to my parents' home, so I'd appreciate it if you could send my belongings there. Wait, I think today will be the last time I see you. Please take care. Following this, I cut ties with her. Later, I heard she apologized to her acquaintance whom she has sold the house to without permission and repaid them. The cost, including demolition and inconvenience fees, amounted to about $170,000. Furthermore, although she sold her apartment, its value had decreased since her purchase. Consequently, she ended up with significant debt. On the other hand, due to her actions, I saved on demolition costs and made a considerable profit from selling my house. Then a new house was built on the land where we had lived. I was nostalgic about the familiar place where I have spent happy times with John. Seeing the new house evoked bittersweet feelings, but I visited the place. Unexpectedly, someone I never wanted to see again appeared. Well, it's been a while, hasn't it? Why are you here, mother-in-law? I'm on my way to work. You're going to work now? Yes. So you've started working? I'm in detail because of you. Why is that? I have nothing to do with it. What happened to the assistant for my apartment you talked about? We've cut ties and are no longer family, so that discussion is void. John would be saddened by the situation. I'd say the same thing to you. What do you mean? John always prioritized me and treated me with such kindness. He was always considerate, wasn't he? What are you trying to say? You used to blame me almost every day, right? Saying that John's death was my fault. Yes, because it's the truth. How do you think John would feel if he heard that? Mother-in-law, it's that the loss were worse. John built a multi-generation house for us because he was worried about you. Did he? Yes, he did. Don't you think John would be saddened to know that you saw the house he built with so much love and kept the money for yourself? You're being sarcastic. If Joe hadn't met you, he would still be alive today. Are you still going to say that? Will that change how you feel? I have no reason to be lectured by you. Now that you've got so much money, you should at least take on some of the debt. You're still family, aren't you? I never really liked you, but I intended to take care of you because you're the beloved mother of John. Of course, that's the least you can do. But honestly, I cannot forgive some of the things you've done and said after I had a stroke. I just can't forget the hurtful words you've said to me. That was months ago. Don't hold the grudge. It's hard for the person who was hurt by those words to forget. You're quite tenacious, aren't you? Call it what you will. I'm not involved anymore. By the way, aren't you supposed to be at work by now? Oh, look at the time. Take care on your way. If it weren't for you, I'd be enjoying a piece for retirement by now. Sounds like you regret your choices. Instead of blaming others, maybe it's best to reflect on your own actions. I then spoke my mind to her and left the scene. It's been only 2 years since John passed away. Thanks to the money he left behind, I'm now able to lead a stable life. The money that John left for me is invaluable, and I intend to use it wisely. I've purchased an apartment near my parents' house, and I'm living there alone. I miss having John by my side, but I find comfort in believing he's watching over me from heaven. I want to live a long, healthy life, cherishing the memories I shared with John and living for the both of us. My dream is to one day reunite with them in heaven and share all our treasured memories once again.
The morning fog clings to everything, turning familiar streets into something alien. I've walked this route to the corner store thousands of times, but today feels different. Maybe it's because I'm out earlier than usual, or maybe it's the way my arthritis is acting up, making each step a reminder that I'm not as young as I used to be. A cat darts across my path, disappearing into an alley. Something about its movement catches my eye, too quick, too desperate. Then I hear it, the soft clatter of a trash can lid. Hello! I call out, taking a few steps into the alley. Is someone there? The sound stops. In the dim light, I make out a small figure crouched behind a dumpster. My first thought is it's just another homeless person, but then I catch a glimpse of tangled blonde hair, and my heart nearly stops. Lila. My voice comes out as barely more than a whisper. The figure freezes. I know those eyes. I've seen them in countless family photos, in my dreams, in the missing person posters that still hang in shop windows around town. My granddaughter. My Lila, who disappeared 8 months ago. Sweetheart, is that really you? She's thinner, so much thinner, and her clothes are filthy. But it's her. I'd know her anywhere. Gran? Her voice is rough, like she hasn't used it in a while. I want to run to her, scoop her up in my arms, but something in her posture stops me. She's coiled tight, ready to bolt. Instead, I lower myself carefully to the ground, ignoring the protest in my knees. I'm right here, baby. I'm not going anywhere. She said you wouldn't want me anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. Who said that, Lila? She shakes her head violently, shrinking further into herself. I'm not supposed to tell. She'll be mad. My mind races.
She.
Not they.
Not he. She.
You must be hungry, I say, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. I was just heading to get some breakfast. Would you like to come with me? We could get those chocolate chip pancakes you always loved. I'm not allowed. Her voice breaks. She'll know. Lila, sweetheart, look at me. I wait until those familiar blue eyes meet mine. No one is going to hurt you anymore. I promise. She takes a small step forward, then another. When she's close enough, I can see the bruises on her arms, partially hidden by her long-sleeved shirt. My hands shake as I fight to maintain my composure. Can we? She hesitates, glancing over her shoulder. Can we go to your house instead? Of course we can. I stand slowly, offering my hand. She stares at it for a long moment before taking it, her tiny fingers ice cold against my palm. As we walk the 3 blocks to my house, my mind is already working. I should call Grant, tell him his daughter is alive. I should call the police. But something holds me back. Lila's words echo in my head. She'll be mad. I've known my daughter-in-law Marissa for 12 years. I've never quite trusted her, but I never thought.
No.
I need proof before I make accusations. I need to understand what happened to my granddaughter. For now, I'll get Lila warm and fed. I'll make her feel safe. And then, when she's ready, I'll find out exactly who hurt her. Because whoever did this to her is going to pay. That's not just a promise to Lila. It's a promise to myself. I watch Grant through my kitchen window as he parks his car, fumbling with his keys in a way I haven't seen since he was a teenager. My call had been brief. Come alone. Don't tell Marissa. It's about Lila. That was enough to bring him racing across town at 7 in the morning. Lila's asleep upstairs in my guest room, wrapped in clean blankets, her dirty clothes replaced with an old t-shirt of mine. She'd barely touched the food I offered before exhaustion took over. The back door opens. "Mom," Grant's voice cracks. "What's going on?" I put my finger to my lips, gesturing for him to follow me upstairs. Each creaking floorboard makes me wince. At the guest room door, I pause, watching his face as he peers inside. The color drains from his features. His hand shoots out, gripping the door frame so hard his knuckles turn white. "That's not. It can't be. It's her," I whisper. "I found her this morning." He takes a stumbling step into the room, then stops. "We should call the police." "Not yet." I pull him back, closing the door softly. "There's something you need to hear first." In the kitchen, Grant paces while I make coffee neither of us will drink. "She mentioned someone, Grant. A woman who kept her somewhere." He stops moving. "What are you saying? Where was Marissa the night Lila disappeared?" "Don't." His voice is sharp. "Don't go there, Mom. When was the last time she attended one of Oliver's school events? Or stayed home for dinner instead of working late?" The questions I've been holding back for months spill out. "Have you checked her bank accounts lately? She's working hard to provide for us." But there's uncertainty in his eyes now. "The real estate market has been booming for the past year," I finish. "I may be retired, but I'm not blind." He slumps into a chair. "What did Lila say exactly?" Before I can answer, a small voice comes from the doorway.
Daddy.
Grant's head snaps up. Lila stands there, drowning in my old t-shirt, her face a mix of hope and fear. "Baby girl," he breathes but doesn't move. Smart man, he remembers how she spooked earlier. Lila takes a tentative step forward. "Are you mad at me?" "Mad." Grant's voice breaks. "Why would I be mad?" "Because I ran away from the cold room. She said you'd be angry if I left." Grant's hands clench into fists. "What cold room, sweetheart?" But Lila's attention has shifted to the window. A car is pulling into the driveway, Marissa's silver BMW. "No." Lila bolts from the room. I hear her feet pounding up the stairs. "Keep her away," I tell Grant, already moving to follow Lila. "I don't care what you have to say, but don't let her in this house." Through the window, I watch Grant intercept Marissa in the driveway. Their voices are muffled, but their body language speaks volumes. Marissa's perfectly manicured hand reaches for Grant's arm. He steps back. She tries to move past him. He blocks her path. Upstairs, I find Lila wedged between the bed and the wall, shaking. "She can't get in," I promise, sitting on the floor nearby. "Your daddy won't let her." "She always gets in," Lila whispers. "She has keys to everything." A chill runs down my spine as I remember the spare key I gave Marissa years ago. I never asked for it back. Below, I hear the back door open. The first thing I do after Marissa leaves is call Jasper. My hands shake as I dial, memories of that confrontation still fresh. The way she'd breezed into my kitchen like she owned it, all perfect makeup and practiced smile. The way Lila's screams had torn through the house when she heard Marissa's voice. "Evie." Jasper's gruff voice brings me back to the present. "It's been a while. I need your help." I glance at Grant, who's sitting at my kitchen table, head in his hands. "Remember that favor you owe Thomas?" A pause. "Your husband made me promise to look after you." "What's wrong?" I tell him everything. About finding Lila, about the cold room, about Marissa's reaction when she saw Grant blocking the door. "She wasn't surprised," I say. "She wasn't even confused. She just smiled." "Don't do anything yet," Jasper says. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. While we wait, I try to coax more information from Lila. She's curled up in the window seat, wrapped in a blanket, watching the street like a sentry. "Can you tell me about the cold room, sweetheart?" She traces patterns on the window glass. "It was in the basement, with the boxes." "What kind of boxes?" "Real estate ones. With papers." She stops drawing. "And pictures of other kids." Grant's head snaps up. "What kids?" "The ones who were there before me. She said they were bad, so they had to go away." Lila's voice drops to a whisper. "I try to be good. The doorbell rings, making us all jump. Through the peephole, I see Jasper, looking more weathered than the last time I saw him at Thomas's funeral. Jesus, he mutters when he sees Lila. Then, more professionally, hello there, young lady. I'm an old friend of your grandmother's. Lila doesn't respond, but she doesn't hide either. Progress. Jasper settles into an armchair, his detective's eyes taking everything in. Grant, I need you to tell me about your family's finances. What does that have to do with? Everything. Jasper cuts in. Your wife's a real estate agent, right? How's business? She says it's good.
Great, actually.
We just bought a new car. And the money for that came from? Grant frowns. Her commission from the Riverside development deal. She said. He stops, color draining from his face. What? I demand. The development that fell through. She told me last month it was dead, but we still got the money. He pulls out his phone, fingers flying over the screen.
Here.
The deposit came through 2 days after Lila disappeared. Jasper leans forward. How much? $50,000. A small sound makes us all turn. Lila's pressing herself against the window, breath fogging the glass. She's here again. Through the window, I catch a glimpse of silver. Marissa's BMW, idling at the corner. I need to get into your house, Jasper tells Grant. Today, while she's out. If there are records of other children.
No.
Grant stands abruptly. I'll do it. She's my wife. My responsibility. Daddy. Lila's voice is small. There's a hidden door behind the wine rack. That's where she keeps the important stuff. The silence that follows is deafening. Grant looks like he's aged 10 years in 10 seconds. How do you know about the wine rack? You've never been in our basement. Yes, I have. Lila turns from the window, and for the first time, I see anger in her young face. That's where the cold room is. The BMW's engine revs, then fades as Marissa drives away. But we all keep staring at the empty street, the horror of what Lila's saying sinking in. My granddaughter wasn't just taken. She was hidden right under our noses in her own home. And Marissa? She's not just a kidnapper. She's something much worse. The basement door in Grant and Marissa's house stands open like a mouth ready to swallow us whole. Jasper insisted on coming along, but he's keeping watch upstairs while Grant and I descend into the darkness. Each step feels like a betrayal, not of Marissa, but of myself. I trusted her with my grandchildren. The wine rack's over here, Grant says, his flashlight beam dancing across bottles. His hands shake as he runs them along the edge. I don't see any.
Click.
The rack swings forward, revealing a narrow passage. The air that rushes out is stale, carrying the metallic tang of fear. I'll go first, I say, but Grant's already pushing past me. The hidden room is smaller than I expected, maybe 12 by 12. Metal filing cabinets line one wall. A small cot sits in the corner, its thin blanket neatly folded. On the opposite wall, a cork board displays photographs, dozens of them. Children's faces stare back at us, some smiling, some not. Oh God. Grant stumbles backward. These are from her development projects. The families she helped relocate. I'm already pulling open filing cabinet drawers. Inside, manila folders are labeled with children's names. Some have red X's marked across them. Mom. Grant's voice cracks. Look at this. He's holding a leather-bound notebook. Inside, in Marissa's precise handwriting, are lists of names, dates, and dollar amounts. Next to each entry is a note. Accepted payment. Refused offer. Alternative arrangement required. My phone buzzes. Jasper's warning signal. Footsteps creak overhead. Hide. I hiss, pushing Grant toward the passage. But we're too late. I wondered when you'd find it. Marissa stands in the doorway, Oliver clutching her hand. My youngest grandson looks confused, tired. Oliver, sweetie, go wait upstairs like Mommy told you. Where's Daddy? Now, Oliver. Small feet patter away. Marissa steps into the room, closing the door behind her. The click of the lock is deafening. You don't understand, she says, almost gently. These children needed help. Their families were desperate, drowning in debt, facing eviction. I gave them a choice. A choice. Grant's voice is barely recognizable. You took our daughter. I protected her. Marissa's composure cracks. You think social services would have let us keep the kids once they discovered our financial situation? The gambling debts you thought I didn't know about. Grant flinches. I step between them, my mind racing. Where's Jasper? Why hasn't he burst in? The other children. I say carefully. Where are they?
Safe.
With families who could afford them. Her smile is almost serene. The system fails these kids. I just redistribute them to homes that can provide better lives. You sell children. The words taste like acid. I save them. She reaches into her pocket, pulls out a phone. And now I have to save Oliver too. The screen shows a video feed. Oliver in the back of a car, someone else at the wheel. My associate will take good care of him until this blows over. Her voice hardens. Unless you'd prefer I call the police? Tell them how you kidnapped Lila. Turn my husband against me. They'll find this room, Grant says. Will they? In an hour, everything here will be gone. Just like it was gone from the other properties. She steps closer. So here's your choice. Walk away now. Forget what you've seen, and Oliver comes home tonight. Or push this, and you'll never see either of my children again. My hand finds the heavy flashlight in my pocket. One swing is all it would take. But Oliver's face fills my mind, scared, alone, with some stranger. Tick-tock, Marissa says softly. What's it going to be? Behind her. The door opens silently. Jasper stands there, his gun trained on Marissa's back. But his slight head shake tells me everything. We don't have proof of Oliver's location. Not yet. Sometimes revenge has to wait. Jasper's living room feels too small for the weight of what we're planning. Maps and documents cover every surface. Property records, bank statements, photographs. Evidence of Marissa's network spreading across 3 states like a cancer. She's meeting someone tonight, Jasper says, tapping a surveillance photo. At the Riverside development site. That's where the money came from, Grant mutters. He hasn't slept in days. None of us have. The deal that wasn't supposed to exist. I study the woman in the photo standing beside Marissa, tall, elegant, with steel gray hair. Who is she? Margaret Whitmore. Jasper's voice is grim. Real estate mogul, philanthropist, and, according to my sources, the mastermind behind this whole operation. They call her the facilitator. My phone vibrates, a text from the neighbor watching Lila. All okay. Still sleeping. We need to move tonight, I say, before they relocate Oliver. Mom, we don't even know if he's there. I point to another photo, barely visible in the stack. A construction site trailer at Riverside, curtains drawn, but a small handprint clearly visible on the window. That's Oliver's height. Grant reaches for his car keys, but Jasper stops him. We do this wrong. We lose everything, including our shot at Whitmore. I don't care about Whitmore. Grant's voice cracks. That's my son. And she's the only one who can bring down the entire operation. I force myself to sound calmer than I feel. If we just get Oliver back, the other children? The words die in my throat as my phone rings. Marissa's name flashes on the screen. Speaker, Jasper mouths, already recording. Hello, Evie. Marissa's voice is honey-sweet. I thought you might like to know that Oliver's asking for his grandmother. Isn't that precious? My hands shake. Let me talk to him. Oh, I don't think so. Not until you return what you took from the basement. We didn't. The notebook, Evie. Margaret's quite upset about it. She's starting to question my judgment in handling this situation. A pause. She's suggesting we might need to make an example. Grant lunges for the phone, but Jasper holds him back. You have 1 hour, Marissa continues. Bring the notebook to Riverside. Come alone, or Oliver joins the other redistributed children. And this time, you won't find him. The line goes dead. It's a trap, Jasper says quietly. Of course it is. I'm already moving, gathering what I need. But she doesn't know about the copies we made. Or the GPS tracker you put on her car. Mom, no. Grant blocks the door. Let me go. She'll be watching for you. I touch his cheek, remembering the little boy who once needed my protection. Now I have to protect his children. Besides, I'm just a harmless old woman, remember?
Evie.
Jasper's voice stops me at the door. What aren't you telling us? I think of the gun in my purse, the one Thomas left me, the one I promised him I'd never need. Sometimes, I say carefully, the only way to protect someone is to become the very thing they need protection from. Mom, take care of Lila. I meet Grant's eyes. And be ready to move when I call. Outside, the setting sun paints the sky blood red. As I drive toward Riverside, I think about Marissa's words, making an example. Well, two can play that game. Margaret Whitmore wants to meet the opposition. She's about to learn why you don't threaten a grandmother's cubs, even if it means becoming a monster to fight one. The Riverside construction site looms ahead, a skeleton of steel beams against the night sky. I park where they can see me coming. No point pretending this isn't a trap. The notebook weighs heavy in my purse, along with Thomas's gun. A figure emerges from the trailer. Marissa, her designer heels somehow pristine despite the muddy ground. Behind her, Margaret Whitmore stands in the doorway, one hand resting possessively on Oliver's shoulder. Pat her down, Whitmore orders. Her voice matches her appearance, refined, cold, efficient. Marissa's hands are clinical as she searches me, removing both the gun and the notebook. Really, Evie? A weapon. Where are the copies? Whitmore asks. Safe. I keep my eyes on Oliver. He's pale but unharmed, clutching his favorite dinosaur toy. Like the evidence we sent to every news outlet in state. Whitmore's smile doesn't waver. Ah yes, your insurance policy. Clever. But ultimately futile. She gestures to someone behind me. Show her why. A phone screen appears in front of my face. On it, Grant's house is visible, illuminated by security lights. A red dances across Lila's bedroom window. Your choice, Whitmore says softly. Which grandchild lives? The world tilts sideways. You're bluffing. Am I? She pulls out her own phone, dials. Take the shot. Wait. The word tears from my throat. I'll tell you where everything is. Just, please. Mom, Oliver's voice quavers. It's okay, sweetheart. Everything's going to be. The gunshot cuts through the night like thunder. For one horrible moment, I think they've killed Lila. Then pain explodes in my shoulder, spinning me to the ground. That was a warning, Whitmore says. The next one won't be. Through the haze of pain, I see Oliver break free, running toward me. Marissa grabs him, but he fights, kicking and screaming. Grandma, let go. She's hurt. Take him inside, Whitmore orders. And get rid of her. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Marissa hesitates. Margaret, maybe we should.
Now, dear.
Unless you'd prefer I handle both problems at once. As Marissa drags Oliver away, his screams echo across the construction site. I try to stand, but hands force me back down. Through my good shoulder, I feel the cold press of a gun barrel. Wait, I gasp. You need me, the evidence. We'll die with you. Whitmore kneels beside me, her expensive perfume mixing with the copper smell of blood. You know what your mistake was, Evelyn? Thinking love could triumph over necessity. These children, their investments, assets. The families we place them with understand this. They pay well for the privilege. They're children, I spit, not commodities. Everything has a price. She stands, brushing dirt from her knees. Even justice. The gun presses harder. I close my eyes, thinking of Thomas, of the promise I made to protect our family. I've failed. Failed Lila. Failed Oliver, failed. A new sound cuts through the night. Sirens. Multiple sirens, getting closer. Margaret. Marissa's voice carries from the trailer. Police. They're everywhere. Whitmore's composure cracks. How? The toy? I laugh, though it sends fresh pain through my shoulder. Oliver's dinosaur. It has a tracker. And a microphone. Say hello to the FBI, Margaret. Her face contorts with rage. The gun swings toward me. 2 shots ring out. Whitmore crumples, revealing Jasper behind her, his service weapon steady. "Sorry I cut it so close," he says, helping me up. "Had to make sure we got everything on tape." Through the trailer window, I see Grant hugging Oliver while officers cuff Marissa. More children emerge, led by social workers, the missing ones from Whitmore's operation. But as darkness creeps at the edges of my vision, I realize we're not done. Somewhere in this network, other Whitmores are still operating. Other children are still waiting to be found. And I'm not finished hunting yet. The hospital room feels too small for all the tension it holds. My shoulder throbs beneath fresh bandages as I watch Marissa through the window, handcuffed to her bed, 2 officers stationed outside. She hasn't stopped crying since they brought her in. "She's asking to speak with you," Jasper says quietly. "Says she'll only tell the whole story to you." Grant stands by the window, his face hard. "You don't owe her anything." But I'm already moving. Because I saw something in Marissa's eyes when Whitmore fell. Not relief, not anger, but recognition. Like she was seeing her own ghost. The officers step aside as I enter. Marissa looks smaller somehow, stripped of her designer clothes and perfect makeup. Her wrists are raw where the handcuffs meet skin. "I was 13, she says before I can speak, "when my father sold me to pay his gambling debts." The words hang in the air between us. I sit, letting silence do its work. Margaret saved me. Her laugh is hollow. That's what I thought then. She placed me with a wealthy family, gave me an education. All I had to do was help her save other children. Like Lila? I never meant. She stops, swallows. Grant was drowning in debt, just like my father. History repeating itself. When Margaret offered a solution, you became the monster that once haunted you. I became a survivor. The words explode from her. You don't understand what it's like, watching everything you love slip away, knowing you're not enough to stop it. No. I lean forward. I watched my husband die of cancer. Watched our savings disappear into medical bills. Watched my son marry a woman who smiled too perfectly and never quite met my eyes. I understand survival, Marissa, but I also understand choice. She flinches. What do you want from me? Names. Locations. Every child you help traffic. Every family involved in Whitmore's network. They'll kill me. Maybe. I stand, my shoulders screaming. Or maybe you can save yourself this time. Really save yourself, not just survive. Her hands shake as she reaches for the water glass. There's a flash drive, hidden in the base of Oliver's dinosaur toy. Everything's there, accounts, contacts, properties. Even Margaret's superiors. Superiors? She was just middle management. Marissa's voice drops. The real power. They're people you see in the news, on campaign posters. Their reach is everywhere. My phone buzzes, a text from Grant. Lila's asking for you. Why tell me this now? Marissa looks up, and for the first time, I see the scared 13-year-old she once was. Because when Margaret died, I saw myself, what I'd become. And I saw Lila in that cold room, becoming me. I move to the door, then pause. The children you helped place, were they all like you? From desperate families?
No.
Her voice cracks. Some were just convenient, profitable. The rage I've been controlling threatens to burst free. But then I think of Lila, of Oliver, of the healing they'll need. I'll make sure Grant brings the kids to visit. I say finally. In prison. They deserve to understand why their mother made the choices she did. And you deserve a chance to become someone they can forgive. Why would you do that? Because revenge ends today. Tomorrow is about healing. I meet her eyes. And because sometimes the best way to save yourself is to save someone else. As I leave, I hear her start to sob, real tears this time, not the perfect ones she used to cry. Outside, my family waits. Grant, Oliver, Lila, even Jasper. They're broken, scarred, but alive. And sometimes, that's enough to start rebuilding. 6 months later, I sit on my back porch, watching Lila and Oliver chase fireflies in the twilight. They're different children now, still healing but laughing more. The nightmares come less frequently. The envelope in my hands feels heavy. Inside is a letter from Marissa, her first since the sentencing. She's been cooperating with the FBI, helping dismantle Whitmore's network piece by piece. 3 senators have resigned. 2 judges. A police chief. Ice cream. Grant calls from the kitchen. The children rush inside, screen door banging behind them. He's different too. Grayer at the temples, but lighter somehow. Like setting down a weight he didn't know he was carrying. "You haven't opened it," Jasper says, settling into the chair beside me. He still comes by most evenings, claiming it's to check on my shoulder. We both know better. Not yet. I watch a firefly land on the railing. Did you know Thomas kept journals? He mentioned them once or twice. I pull out the worn leather book I found in our old filing cabinet. I found his last entry, written the day before he died. The pages fall open to the familiar passage. He wrote about forgiveness, about how it's not a gift you give someone else, but a choice you make for yourself. Sounds like Thomas. A shriek of laughter from inside makes us both smile. Then Jasper's expression turns serious. The task force found another property yesterday, like the ones in Marissa's files. My hands tighten on the journal. Children?
No.
But evidence. Names. Dates going back 20 years. He pauses. They want you to consult. Your perspective on the case, your connection with the families. I'm retired, remember? Are you? He nods toward the house. Those kids in there? They're alive because you refuse to stay retired. There are other children out there, Evie. Other families being torn apart. Before I can respond, the screen door opens. Lila stands there, ice cream dripping down her cone. "Grandma, can we read another chapter tonight?" "Of course, sweetheart." She beams, then hesitates. "Is that from Mom?" I look at the unopened letter.
Yes.
"Would you like to read it together?" She considers this, then shakes her head. "Maybe tomorrow. Tonight's for stories." After she disappears inside, Jasper stands. "I'll let the task force know you'll think about it." I haven't said yes. You haven't said no either. He tips his hat. Thomas would be proud, you know, of all of this. Later, after stories and tucking in and one last glass of water, I finally open Marissa's letter. It's short, just a few lines. "I dreamed of Lila last night. Not in the cold room, but in your garden, chasing fireflies. I hope that's real, not just my imagination. I hope she's healing. I hope someday she'll understand that I'm trying to heal too. The investigators are coming tomorrow. I'm going to tell them everything. Not for redemption. I don't deserve that yet. But because you showed me that saving yourself means saving others, even if you have to do it from behind bars." I fold the letter, tuck it into Thomas's journal. Outside, the fireflies are still dancing, their light like tiny beacons in the darkness. From upstairs comes the soft sound of children breathing, safe in their dreams. Tomorrow I'll call Jasper. We'll talk about the task force, about other children who need finding, about justice that doesn't end with revenge. But tonight, I'll sit here a little longer, watching the fireflies, remembering how light can pierce even the deepest darkness if you're brave enough to keep looking for it. And sometimes, that's the greatest revenge of all.
The door slammed behind me with a resounding thud, the sound echoing through the empty house. "Jared, I'm home," I called out, kicking off my shoes and hanging up my coat. No response. Strange, I thought. His car was in the driveway. As I rounded the corner into the living room, the sight before me stopped me dead in my tracks. There on the couch was my husband locked in a passionate embrace with my sister-in-law, Miranda. Time seemed to freeze as a torrent of emotions flooded through me. Shock, betrayal, rage. What the hell is going on here? I shouted, my voice trembling. Jared and Miranda broke apart, their faces flushed with guilt and panic. "Callie, it's not what it looks like," Jared stammered, scrambling to his feet. "Not what it looks like." I spat back, my hands balling into fists. "You were all over my sister, Jared. How could you do this to me?" Miranda stood up, adjusting her disheveled clothing. "Calm down, Callie," she said coolly. "It was just a little harmless fun." The audacity of her words made my blood boil. "Harmless fun? You're supposed to be my family!" "What's all this racket?" Marlene's shrill voice cut through the air as she emerged from the kitchen, her eyes narrowing at the scene before her. "Your son and daughter have been carrying on an affair behind my back," I spat, glaring at the two of them. Marlene scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Don't be so dramatic, Callie. This family doesn't need your overreactions." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother-in-law was defending their betrayal. "Are you serious right now, Marlene? How can you be okay with this?" "Enough," Jared shouted, his face flushed with anger. "You're blowing this way out of proportion, Callie. It was just a stupid mistake." "A mistake?" The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I looked around at the three of them, my so-called family, and felt a profound sense of isolation wash over me. In that moment, I realized that, no matter what I said or did, they would never take my side. I was alone in this. Tears stung my eyes as I fought to maintain my composure. "You know what? I'm done," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of sadness and determination. "I'm done with all of you and your lies." Without another word, I turned and stormed out of the living room, grabbing my coat and keys on the way out. As I flung open the front door, I heard Marlene's voice call out behind me. "Don't be so dramatic, Callie. You'll be back." But as I stepped out into the cool night air, I knew in my heart that she was wrong. This was the end of the road for us. I had finally seen them for who they truly were, and there was no going back. I slammed the car door shut and peeled out of the driveway, tears streaming down my face. How could this be happening? Just a few years ago, Jared and I were so happy, so in love. We had dreams of starting a family, growing old together in a little house with a white picket fence. That future now seemed like a cruel mirage. I thought back to the day we first met at the hospital cafeteria. I was a young nurse, and he was a charming medical student doing his rounds. He flashed that dazzling smile and struck up a conversation, and I was instantly smitten. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared passion for helping others and our desire for a simple, peaceful life together. Those early years were blissful. Jared was attentive, caring, and always put me first. But as time went on, cracks began to show. His spending habits spiraled out of control, and he racked up debt faster than I could keep track of. I tried to talk to him about it, but he always brushed it off, promising he had it under control. Then there was Miranda. From the moment I met her, I sensed something off about her. She was always a little too friendly with Jared, a little too touchy-feely, but I pushed those thoughts aside, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. When Jared suggested we move in with his mother to ease our financial burden, I was hesitant, but he assured me it would only be temporary, and I reluctantly agreed. Little did I know, I was walking straight into a web of lies and manipulation. Marlene's house was like a prison, with unspoken rules and a suffocating atmosphere of hostility. She and Miranda treated me like an outsider, constantly belittling me and undermining my authority. Jared, spineless as ever, did nothing to defend me, too busy seeking his mother's approval. While I worked long shifts at the hospital, trying to keep us afloat, Marlene and Miranda lounged around the house, idle and resentful of my absence. They would deliberately create chaos and disarray, disrupting my routine and making it impossible for me to find any sense of peace or order. And Jared? He was too busy burying his head in the sand, ignoring the mounting tensions and the growing rift in our marriage. I tried to talk to him to make him see what was happening, but he refused to listen. He was so desperate for his mother's love and approval that he was willing to sacrifice our relationship for it. As I drove aimlessly through the night, my mind raced with 1,000 thoughts and emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, they all swirled together in a toxic cocktail. But beneath it all, I felt a glimmer of something else. Determination. I may have been trapped in their web of lies and manipulation, but I wouldn't let them break me. I was stronger than that, stronger than they could ever imagine. After that fateful night, I found myself thrust into a new reality, one where the walls of Marlene's house felt like they were closing in on me. The air was thick with unspoken rules and covert hostility, and I struggled to find my footing in this oppressive atmosphere. Marlene and Miranda made it clear from the start that I was an outsider in their domain. They would exchange pointed looks and whispered comments whenever I entered a room, their eyes boring into me with a mixture of disdain and contempt. "Honestly, Callie, must you leave such a mess everywhere you go?" Marlene would sneer, gesturing to the perfectly tidy living room. Miranda would chime in with a smirk. I don't know how you manage to make such a pigsty out of everything. Their words were like daggers, chipping away at my self-worth bit by bit. And Jared? He remained silent, too spineless to stand up for me against his mother's constant belittling. While I worked long, grueling shifts at the hospital, trying to make ends meet, Marlene and Miranda lounged around the house, idle and resentful of my absence. They would deliberately create chaos and disarray, leaving messes for me to clean up when I returned home, exhausted and drained. Callie, darling, you really should learn to keep a tighter ship around here. Marlene would tut, her eyes glinting with malice. It was a twisted game of control, and they were determined to make me the loser. Jared's dependency on his mother's approval became more apparent with each passing day. He would cower and capitulate to her every whim, too afraid to risk her disapproval. Our marriage, once a source of joy and strength, had become a battleground, and I was fighting a losing war. Jared, please, can't you see what they're doing? I pleaded with him one night, tears streaming down my face. They're tearing us apart, piece by piece. But he just shook his head, his eyes downcast. You're overreacting, Callie. They're family. We have to stick together. Stick together? The irony of his words was almost too much to bear. Hadn't they already shattered that sacred bond with their betrayal? As the days turned into weeks, the weight of their constant belittling and manipulation began to take its toll. I found myself withdrawing, retreating into the sanctuary of my work, where at least I could find a brief respite from the chaos. It was there, in the halls of the hospital, that I met Lucas, a kind-hearted man whose son was one of my patients. We struck up a friendship, bonding over our shared love of literature and our desire to find peace in this chaotic world. With Lucas, I didn't have to put on a brave face or pretend everything was okay. He saw through the cracks in my armor and offered a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on. His empathy and support were like a lifeline, reminding me that there was still goodness in the world, even amidst the darkness I was enduring. As our connection deepened, I began to question the life I had resigned myself to. Was this really all I deserved? To be belittled and disrespected by the very people who were supposed to love and cherish me? A spark of defiance began to flicker within me, a reminder of the resilience that had carried me through so many challenges in my life. I may have been trapped in their web of lies and manipulation, but I refused to let them break me. Not this time. As the weeks dragged on, Marlene and Miranda's manipulative games intensified. It was as if they took perverse pleasure in tightening their control over me, squeezing the last vestiges of self-worth from my soul. Callie, darling, did you really think that outfit was appropriate for work? Marlene would sneer, her eyes raking over me with disdain. You're a nurse, not a streetwalker. Miranda would chime in with a cruel laugh. Yeah, Callie, leave something to the imagination, won't you? Their words were like knives, cutting deep into my already fragile psyche. I would retreat into myself, trying to tune out their constant barrage of insults and belittling comments. But it wasn't just their words that tormented me. Miranda took a particular delight in disrupting my work life, creating chaos and disarray at home that would bleed into my professional responsibilities. She would deliberately leave messes around the house, knowing I would have to rush to clean them up before my shift. Or she would accidentally misplace my scrubs or work bag, forcing me to scramble to find them before I was late. Oops, sorry, Callie, she would say with a sickly sweet smile. I must have misplaced your things again. You really should be more organized. It was a twisted game, and I was the unwitting pawn. Through it all, Jared remained silent, too cowardly to stand up to his mother and sister. He would watch as they tore me down, piece by piece, too afraid of losing their approval to intervene. Jared, please, I would beg him, tears streaming down my face. Can't you see what they're doing to me? To us? But he would just shake his head, his eyes downcast. They're family, Callie. We have to stick together. Stick together? The irony of his words was almost too much to bear. It was during those dark days that I found solace in my work at the hospital. There, I could escape the suffocating atmosphere of Marlene's house and find a brief respite from the constant barrage of abuse. And it was there that I met Lucas, a kind-hearted man whose son was one of my patients. We struck up a friendship almost immediately, bonding over our shared love of literature and our desire to find peace in this chaotic world. With Lucas, I didn't have to put on a brave face or pretend everything was okay. He saw through the cracks in my armor and offered a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on. His empathy and support were like a lifeline, reminding me that there was still goodness in the world, even amidst the darkness I was enduring. As our connection deepened, I began to question the life I had resigned myself to. Was this really all I deserved? To be belittled and disrespected by the very people who were supposed to love and cherish me? A spark of defiance began to flicker within me, a reminder of the resilience that had carried me through so many challenges in my life. I may have been trapped in their web of lies and manipulation, but I refused to let them break me. Not this time. With Lucas's encouragement, I started to stand up for myself, pushing back against Marlene and Miranda's constant barrage of insults and mind games. It was a small act of rebellion, but it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. "You know what, Marlene?" I said one day, my voice trembling but firm. "I'm done letting you and Miranda treat me like garbage. I deserve better than this." Marlene's eyes widened in shock, clearly unaccustomed to such defiance from me, but before she could respond, I turned and walked away, my head held high. It was a small victory, but it was the first step on a long road to reclaiming my self-worth and my life. As the weeks passed, the tension in the house grew thicker, like a suffocating blanket weighing down on me. Marlene and Miranda's barbs became sharper, their insults more cutting, as if they could sense my newfound defiance and were determined to snuff it out. "Look at you, Callie, acting all high and mighty," Marlene sneered one evening as I returned from a long shift at the hospital. "Don't forget your place in this household." Miranda chimed in with a cruel laugh. "Yeah, Callie, you're nothing but a burden to us all. You should be grateful we even let you stay here." Their words stung, but I refused to let them see how much they affected me. I held my head high and walked past them, my jaw clenched in determination. But Jared, as always, remained silent, too cowardly to stand up to his mother and sister. He would watch as they tore me down, piece by piece, too afraid of losing their approval to intervene. Finally, one night, I couldn't take it anymore. As Marlene and Miranda launched into yet another tirade, berating me for some perceived slight, something inside me snapped. "Enough!" I shouted, slamming my fist down on the kitchen table. "I'm done with this constant abuse, this never-ending barrage of insults and belittling." Marlene's eyes widened in shock, clearly unaccustomed to such defiance from me. "How dare you speak to me like that in my own house?" she hissed, her face contorted with rage. "Your house?" I spat back, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and newfound courage. "This was supposed to be my home too, Marlene, but you and Miranda have made it a living hell for me." Miranda scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Callie. We're just trying to help you fit in with this family." "Fit in?" I laughed bitterly. "You've made it abundantly clear that I'll never be a part of this family. Not really." Jared, who had been sitting silently in the corner, finally spoke up. "Callie, please, let's not make a scene." I whirled on him, my eyes blazing with fury. "A scene? Is that all you care about, Jared? Keeping up appearances while your own family tears me apart?" He flinched, shrinking back from the intensity of my gaze. I just think we should all try to get along," he mumbled weakly. "Get along?" I shook my head in disbelief. "How can I get along with people who have made it their mission to destroy me? To strip away every last shred of my self-worth and dignity?" Marlene stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, young lady. You're the one who's brought nothing but drama and chaos into this family." "Drama and chaos?" I laughed bitterly. "That's rich, coming from the woman who's been orchestrating this whole twisted game from the start." Miranda sneered. "Game? Don't flatter yourself, Callie. You're not worth the effort." That was the final straw. I felt something inside me snap, a dam of pent-up frustration and anger finally bursting forth. "You know what? I'm done," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I'm done with all of you and your lies, your manipulation, your constant need to tear me down." Marlene's eyes widened in shock, clearly not expecting such defiance from me. "You ungrateful little—" But I didn't let her finish. I turned on my heel and stormed out of the kitchen, heading straight for the bedroom to pack my bags. "Callie, wait!" Jared called out, trailing behind me. "Where are you going?" I whirled around to face him, my eyes blazing with a mix of anger and determination. "I'm leaving, Jared. I'm leaving this toxic household, and I'm leaving you." His face fell, a flicker of fear passing over his features. But where will you go?" I shook my head, a sad smile tugging at my lips. "Anywhere but here. Anywhere I can finally be free of this constant abuse, this never-ending cycle of manipulation and control." As I stuffed the last of my belongings into my suitcase, I heard Marlene's shrill voice echoing down the hallway. "Don't be so dramatic, Callie. You'll be back, crawling and begging for our forgiveness." But as I stepped out into the cool night air, suitcase in hand, I knew in my heart that she was wrong. This was the end of the road for us, the final chapter in a story of betrayal and broken trust. I glanced back one last time at the house that had once been my home, a sense of finality settling over me. "You won't break me," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "You'll regret losing me." And with that, I turned and walked away, my head held high, and my heart filled with a newfound sense of determination. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The night I left Marlene's house, I felt a strange mix of emotions, fear, sadness, but also a profound sense of relief. As I drove away, the weight of years of emotional abuse and manipulation seemed to lift from my shoulders, replaced by a newfound determination to take control of my life. In the days that followed, I found a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a far cry from the oppressive atmosphere of my former home. It was small and sparsely furnished, but to me it felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe without the constant weight of judgment and criticism bearing down on me. As I settled into my new life, I threw myself into my work at the hospital, finding solace in the familiar routine and the knowledge that I was making a difference in people's lives. It was there that I reconnected with Lucas, the kind-hearted man whose support had been a lifeline during my darkest days. We would often grab coffee together during our breaks, and I found myself opening up to him in a way I hadn't with anyone else. He listened without judgment, offering words of encouragement and understanding that helped to heal the deep emotional wounds left by my failed marriage and the betrayal of my own family. "You're so strong, Callie," he would say, his eyes filled with a warmth and sincerity that I had almost forgotten existed. "What you've been through would have broken most people, but you've come out the other side, even more resilient." His words resonated deeply within me, reminding me of the inner strength that had carried me through so many challenges in my life. I may have been beaten down, but I refused to be broken. With Lucas's support, I began to rediscover the parts of myself that I had lost along the way. My love of reading, my passion for gardening, my appreciation for the simple pleasures in life. I reconnected with old friends, rekindling relationships that had been neglected during the tumultuous years of my marriage. Slowly but surely, I felt myself coming back to life, like a flower blooming after a long, harsh winter. In my quieter moments, I would reflect on the emotional scars left by my ordeal, the deep cuts inflicted by the very people who were supposed to love and cherish me. But instead of wallowing in bitterness and resentment, I found solace in my own resilience, in the knowledge that I had emerged from that darkness stronger and more self-assured than ever before. "You know, Lucas," I said to him one day as we sat sipping our coffee in the hospital cafeteria, "I used to think that my life was defined by the people around me, my husband, my in-laws, the roles I played for them. But now I realize that my life is my own, and I'm the one who gets to write my story." He smiled, reaching across the table to give my hand a gentle squeeze. "And what a beautiful story it's going to be, Callie. You've already overcome so much, and the best is yet to come." As I looked into his kind eyes, I felt a warmth bloom in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced in far too long. It was the promise of new beginnings, of a future filled with possibility and hope. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace, secure in the knowledge that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength and resilience to face them head-on. The road to empowerment had been long and arduous, but I had emerged on the other side, stronger and more self-assured than ever before. It had been several months since I had walked out of Marlene's house, leaving behind the toxic web of lies and manipulation that had nearly broken me. In that time, I had worked hard to rebuild my life, embracing my newfound independence and rediscovering the parts of myself that I had lost along the way. So when my phone rang one afternoon and I saw Marlene's name flashing across the screen, I felt a surge of anger and resentment. How dare she try to worm her way back into my life after everything she had put me through? "What do you want, Marlene?" I answered, my voice clipped and cold. There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if she was taken aback by my icy tone. "Callie, dear, is that any way to speak to your mother-in-law?" I scoffed. "You lost the right to call yourself that the moment you betrayed me and took their side." Another pause, then a heavy sigh. "Callie, I need your help." Those words hung in the air, and for a moment, I was tempted to simply hang up the phone and be done with it. But a part of me, the part that still clung to the naive hope that she might actually show some remorse, made me hesitate. "What could you possibly need my help with?" I asked, my voice dripping with disdain. It's Jared and Miranda," she said, her voice trembling. "They've made a mess of things, and now we're in real trouble." I felt a flicker of satisfaction at the admission, but I pushed it aside. "And why should I care about your problems, Marlene? After the way you all treated me, why would I lift a finger to help you?" "Please, Callie," she pleaded, her usual haughty demeanor crumbling. "We're in over our heads here. Jared's financial mistakes, Miranda's reckless spending, it's all caught up to us, and we're drowning." I could hear the desperation in her voice, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice low and measured. "You're calling me, the same woman you belittled and abused for years, begging for help to clean up the mess you and your precious children have made." Silence on the other end of the line. "Well, let me tell you something, Marlene," I continued, my voice rising with each word. "You had your chance to treat me with respect, to stand by me as family should, but instead you chose to tear me down, to make me feel worthless and alone." I could hear her shallow breathing, but she didn't interrupt. "So you know what? You can take your problems and your pleas for help, and you can shove them. I'm done being your scapegoat, your punching bag. You made your bed, Marlene, and now you can lie in it." With that, I hung up the phone, a triumphant smile spreading across my face. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to Marlene and her manipulative games, and it felt incredible. As I basked in the afterglow of my newfound power, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The toxic ties that had once bound me to that family were finally severed, and I was free to move forward with my life, unburdened by their drama and dysfunction. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose, I sat down and penned a heartfelt letter to Lucas, the man whose kindness and support had been a guiding light during my darkest days. I poured out my gratitude, thanking him for helping me find the strength to break free from the chains of my past and embrace the future with open arms. And as I sealed the envelope, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement at the thought of what that future might hold. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive, ready to embark on a new chapter, filled with possibility and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer the broken, defeated woman who had walked out of Marlene's house all those months ago. I was stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before, a true survivor who had faced down her demons and emerged victorious. In the months that followed my decisive break from Marlene and her toxic family, my life blossomed in ways I had never imagined possible. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, freeing me to embrace the world with open arms and an open heart. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, finding immense fulfillment in the simple act of caring for others. My colleagues remarked on the newfound confidence and radiance that seemed to emanate from me, a stark contrast to the broken, defeated woman I had been just a few months prior. As my self-assurance grew, I found myself becoming a mentor of sorts to the younger nurses on the floor. They would seek me out, drawn to the aura of resilience and strength that surrounded me, eager to learn from my experiences and the hard-won wisdom I had gained. "How did you find the courage to walk away from such a toxic situation?" one young nurse asked me one day, her eyes wide with a mixture of admiration and trepidation. I smiled, reaching out to give her hand a gentle squeeze. It wasn't easy, believe me. There were moments when I thought the weight of it all would crush me. But deep down, I knew that I deserved better, that we all deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter what. She nodded, hanging on my every word as I recounted the harrowing journey that had led me to this point, the betrayal, the emotional abuse, the ultimate decision to break free and reclaim my life. "You're so strong, Callie," she murmured, her voice tinged with awe. "I hope I can be half as brave as you someday." In those moments, I felt a profound sense of purpose wash over me. My story, the tale of my resilience in the face of adversity, had the power to inspire and empower others. It was a legacy far greater than I could have ever imagined. Outside of work, my life continued to blossom in unexpected ways. I reconnected with old friends, rekindling relationships that had fallen by the wayside during the tumultuous years of my marriage. We would gather for dinners and movie nights, laughing and reminiscing about the carefree days of our youth. And then there was Lucas, the kind-hearted man whose unwavering support had been a guiding light during my darkest hours. Our friendship deepened, evolving into something more, a connection that transcended mere words, a bond forged in the fires of shared struggle and mutual understanding. As we spent more time together, I found myself opening up to him in ways I never thought possible, sharing the deepest corners of my heart and soul. And in his warm embrace, I found a sense of peace and acceptance that had eluded me for far too long. On quiet evenings, when the city was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, I would gaze out over the skyline from the comfort of my modest apartment, marveling at the journey that had brought me to this point. The road had been long and arduous, paved with heartbreak and betrayal, but I had emerged on the other side stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. In those moments of quiet reflection, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. Gratitude for the trials that had tested my mettle, for the people who had lifted me up when I could no longer stand on my own, and for the indomitable spirit that had carried me through it all. As the city lights twinkled like a million tiny stars, I smiled to myself, secure in the knowledge that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was equipped to face them head-on. The path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer the broken, defeated woman who had walked out of Marlene's house all those months ago. I was a survivor, a warrior, a beacon of strength and resilience for all those who dared to dream of a better life. And as I gazed out over the vast expanse of possibility that stretched before me, I knew that the best was yet to come.
In the sweltering heat of Qatar's desert, I felt as if the warmth had become a part of me, wrapping around me like a second skin. Standing on the old wooden pier, I idly kicked my sandals against the time-worn boards, my eyes drawn to a procession of sleek, high-end cars cruising by. The drivers, mostly young men sporting sharp haircuts and designer shades, seemed to slow their vehicles just enough to cast long, assessing looks my way. "Nice view, huh?" The deep, unexpected voice made me start. I turned to see a tall man with sun-bleached hair and a confident smile, leaning casually against the railing nearby. He carried himself with a certain arrogance that I usually found off-putting, but tonight, it didn't irk me as much. "Yeah," I replied nonchalantly, my gaze returning to the horizon where the sun dipped low, painting the sky in vivid hues. "Sunsets are pretty common here, though, wouldn't you say?" He laughed, a warm, inviting sound. "Maybe common, but still pretty impressive. And those cars," he added, gesturing toward a cherry-red Ferrari that had just stopped further down the pier, from which a glamorous woman was stepping out, "are definitely not common." "Nope," I agreed with a smirk. "Those are a rare sight." His eyes sparkled with amusement. "You don't seem too taken with all this glitz and glamour." Leaning back against the railing, I crossed my arms. "It wears off. It seems like everyone here measures their worth by their bank balance." Raising an eyebrow, he asked, "So, what measures yours?" His question caught me off guard. Growing up as the daughter of a billionaire who co-owned a massive American chocolate empire, I'd seen enough of the world to last a lifetime. That's why I chose to forge my path in Qatar, far from my father's shadow. Well, I hesitated, unsure how much to disclose. I value hard work and making your way in the world. He observed me intently for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. I'm Robert, by the way, he said, extending his hand. Emma, I replied, shaking his hand. His touch sent a surprising jolt through me weeks later, as we lounged by the pool at his upscale hotel, sipping cocktails under the shimmering city lights. Robert revealed that his company was searching for someone with my qualifications. We could use someone like you, he stated casually. Your company? I looked up sharply. Yeah, he shrugged. It's a major investment firm in the States. We're always looking for talented people. His gaze locked with mine. So, what do you say? Interested in a change of scenery from the usual Qatar sunsets. The proposal sent my heart racing. The idea of starting anew, particularly with Robert, was thrilling yet daunting. I hesitated, my inner doubts surfacing. I don't know. It's a big step, I admitted. He leaned in, his voice low and persuasive. I know, but it could be an incredible adventure for you. After a moment of mixed emotions, I decided to take the risk. However, maintaining my independence was crucial. I couldn't simply move in with Robert. Instead, I found a modest apartment in a typical neighborhood, far from the opulent lifestyle he was accustomed to. This way, I could explore this new chapter on my terms, keeping my carefully crafted identity intact. I decided not to tell my father about my move to the States just yet. He was always caught up in a whirlwind of international business trips, and I wasn't quite sure how he'd react to my recent adventures in Qatar, not to mention my budding relationship with Robert. Only a few weeks after settling into my new role at Robert's company, I was already making strides. The job was demanding, but I thrived, feeling a sense of fulfillment that had eluded me in Qatar. One evening, after a particularly taxing day, all I wanted was to sink into my old, comfy couch. But as I walked in, I froze. There, in my modest living room, sat my father. He looked utterly out of place in a space that clearly screamed budget living. My jaw dropped in shock. Dad. The word barely made it out as my voice cracked. With a slow, familiar smile, he replied, Well, Mira, it seems a father can visit his daughter, even in her humble abode. How did you find me? I asked, my mind racing for explanations. He shrugged, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. Let's just say a father has his ways, especially when his daughter jets off to Qatar and then pops up working at a top investment firm across the ocean. I swallowed hard, realizing he knew everything. The world seemed to spin slightly off kilter. I just needed a new start, I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. A chance to build something for myself on my terms. He nodded slowly, understandingly. I get that, he said earnestly. But, honey, pretending to be someone you're not isn't the way to do it. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to be fully honest. Over the next hour, I poured out my heart, telling him about my life in Qatar, the job I'd secured, and most importantly, about Robert. He listened intently, his expression unreadable. After I finished, a weighty silence hung in the air. Finally, he studied me for a long moment, then his face broke into a slow smile. It wasn't exactly approval, but it wasn't disapproval either. All right, he chuckled, pride evident in his voice. Looks like you've grown up quite a bit. Just be careful, okay? This world can be tough. I will, I promised, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. The next year was a blur of hard work and stolen moments with Robert. The pressures of the firm were immense, but I excelled. My efforts and intelligence finally gained the recognition they deserved. A year later, I was promoted to associate partner, a significant achievement in the cutthroat world of investment banking. One evening, while cooking dinner in my tiny apartment, Robert still hadn't convinced me to move in. He suddenly dropped to one knee, a sparkling diamond ring catching the candlelight. Emma, he began, his voice laden with emotion, you're the smartest, most beautiful woman I know. Will you marry me? Tears welled up in my eyes as I choked out a joyful yes and threw my arms around him. At that moment, I knew I was the happiest woman alive. Wedding planning began immediately. We opted for a simple ceremony on a secluded beach in the Maldives, envisioning a day that was just about us, Robert and me, celebrating our love without any ostentation. As the ocean breeze gently swept across the shoreline, I contemplated the simplicity of our upcoming wedding. Despite my background, a lavish ceremony was the last thing I wanted. It was essential to keep my past under wraps. Still, there was someone I needed to update. "Hey, Dad," I began, my voice a cocktail of excitement and apprehension. On the other end, his familiar chuckle eased some of my nerves. "It's time for some news?" "Go ahead, kiddo," he encouraged. "Robert and we're getting married," I announced. A pause hung in the air before he responded with a seriousness that was uncharacteristic. "Honey, I'm happy for you, but coming to the wedding might not be the best idea. It could stir up more attention than you'd want." My heart dropped as I understood the weight of his words. His high-profile presence could easily unravel the discreet life I had built. "Okay," I conceded softly, forcing a smile into my voice. He cleared his throat, adding, "And Mira, make sure you guys are thinking ahead. A prenup wouldn't hurt." His practical advice didn't surprise me. It made sense, given our distinct backgrounds. "Sure, Dad," I replied, embracing his suggestion wholeheartedly. Meeting Robert's family introduced a different set of challenges. His mother, draped in elegance and exuding wealth, gave me a lukewarm smile that barely masked her scrutiny. "Robert hasn't told us much about your work," she probed, her sweetness tinged with insincerity. Robert, ever so naive to the undercurrents, beamed with pride. "She's an associate partner at a prestigious investment firm, Mom. She's incredibly talented." Her smile tightened. "An investment firm? How interesting." The evening rolled on with subtle jabs and pointed inquiries about our financial arrangements. Calm and collected, I addressed each one. "We've already discussed a prenup," I informed her, my tone both cool and assured. Her reaction was a mix of startled respect and reluctant admiration. The wedding day itself was exactly as I had hoped, simple and beautiful. Just me, Robert, and the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore as we sealed our promises to each other. A few weeks later, back in New York, Robert surprised me with the keys to a beautiful house in a tranquil, upscale neighborhood. It wasn't a mansion, but it was perfect for us. As we stood in the foyer surrounded by unpacked boxes, I felt a wave of contentment. Life was not exactly as I had planned, but it was genuinely fulfilling. However, as time passed, the glow of my professional successes seemed to cast a shadow over Robert's spirits. His congratulations, once warm and enthusiastic, now felt perfunctory. The joy in his eyes seemed to dim with each of my achievements. Then came the merger, an enormous success for the firm and a personal triumph for me. I rushed to share the news with Robert, only to find him subdued. His reaction was a complex mix of astonishment and restraint. "You did good, babe," he said, the strain evident in his voice. It felt like praise forced out rather than freely given. A chill of realization crept over me. Could my successes be diminishing him somehow? At home, his mother was no help. Her expertise in passive aggression shone through. Back in my day, she would often start, her voice dripping with condescension. Wives focused on their homes, not playing at business. Navigating this new dynamic was challenging. I had to tread carefully, balancing my professional aspirations with the personal pressures at home, all the while questioning how to maintain my happiness without overshadowing those I loved. The day Robert barged into our house, his face stormy and his mood darker than I had ever seen, my heart sank. Without a word, he threw a thick envelope onto the kitchen table. "Severance package," he growled, his voice cold. "The staff, cleaners, cooks, gardeners, they're all gone. Looks like you'll finally have to make this house a home." Anger surged within me, but it was swiftly washed away by a wave of fear. I didn't want a divorce. I wanted the man I had married, the loving Robert, to return. In a desperate attempt to mend our fraying relationship, I decided to embrace the role of homemaker, believing that if I could create the perfect domestic sanctuary, perhaps Robert would see my value again. A part of me longed to call my father, to seek his advice and possibly his help, but pride held me back. I couldn't bear to let him see the mess I was in. This was my battle to handle. Months later, to smooth over the growing rift, Robert planned a cruise on his luxurious yacht. The sun glared off the polished deck as we sailed. His mother, Rose, in a garish white pantsuit adorned with excessive diamonds, held court among her affluent friends. They cackled over champagne, their laughter grating against the rhythmic slap of the waves. Robert, ever the attentive son, hovered around, refilling glasses and forcing laughter at his mother's stale jokes. I managed a strained smile, trying to ignore the knot of discomfort in my stomach. As the day progressed, champagne loosened Rose's tongue, transforming her polite mask into a spiteful sneer. Swinging toward me with a glass in hand, she slurred, "It takes a special kind of woman to give up a promising career to scrub toilets." Her companions erupted in harsh laughter, their glee cutting through me like a blade. I remained silent, not wanting to escalate the tension. Robert, oblivious or indifferent, laughed along, praising my newfound domestic skills. "That's right, Ma. Myra's a real domestic goddess now." The evening spiraled with each passing hour. Each jab from Rose was met with nothing but feeble jokes from Robert. I felt reduced to a mere trophy wife, my silence misread as submission. As darkness fell and the yacht neared a cluster of small islands, I'd had enough. I approached the captain, a seasoned sailor named Jackson, and said firmly, "I need to get off this boat." He looked at me with concern. "Here? In the middle of nowhere?" "Yes," I affirmed, my resolve hardening. "There's an island nearby. Please drop me off and notify the Coast Guard." A few minutes later, the yacht slowed near my chosen island. As I moved toward the railing, clutch in hand, Robert finally took notice. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded, irritation sharp in his voice. "Somewhere you don't want me to be," I retorted, my decision clear. "Consider this marriage over. Both you and your precious mother are unworthy of any more of my time." Rose, spurred on by alcohol and my defiance, cackled. "You think you can just walk away? You've been living off his money." Robert's face twisted in anger as he lunged for my purse, ripping it from my hands. "These are my credit cards, Myra. Leave if you must, but leave everything." As I stepped onto the small boat that would take me to shore, leaving behind the toxic atmosphere and the stifling confines of a loveless marriage, I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I was finally taking a stand, not just for my dignity, but for my happiness. By the break of dawn, I expected to see her stranded on that island, pitiful and desperate. But as I observed the two of them, devoid of compassion and warmth, an unusual calm enveloped me. "Perhaps," I replied, locking eyes with Robert. "But at least I'll retain my dignity." Robert's yacht floated nonchalantly at anchor, echoes of raucous laughter drifting from it. I stood on the dock, the chilly night breeze providing relief from the yacht's oppressive revelry. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the shadows, his uniform sharply contrasting with the yacht's festive environment. He marched determinedly toward the vessel, his voice resonating over the water. "Ahoy! This island is private, and access is restricted. Understand?" His tone carried the weight of authority. Robert, still flushed from his previous outburst, leaned over the railing, baffled. "What? Who are you?" The man, a security guard named Hannah, whom I had discreetly informed earlier, an act of quiet rebellion that felt incredibly satisfying, stood firm. "Security," he stated simply. "Looks like you're lost. You need to leave within 3 hours." Robert scoffed. 3 hours? We just arrived. And why should we listen to you? Hannah, unimpressed, replied in a lower tone, "You don't want to cross the owner of this island. He's a man of significant influence. It's in your best interest not to antagonize him." As Rose began to realize what was happening, she leaned in, her voice overly sweet. "Oh, but surely a little longer won't hurt?" Hannah then turned to me, his expression softening upon recognition. He saluted crisply. "Miss Lambert," he announced, his voice carrying across the waters. "Your private plane is prepared and awaiting your departure. Shall we proceed to the airstrips?" The air was electric with tension. Robert's complexion turned pale, and Rose's mouth fell open in shock. This was the moment of truth. I smiled broadly, walking toward Hannah and embracing him warmly. "Thank you, Hannah. You and your team have done an exemplary job," he responded, slightly embarrassed by my show of gratitude. "Just doing my job, Miss Lambert." Robert, regaining his voice, stammered. "Wait, Lambert." Ignoring him, I followed Hannah, my spirits uplifted. The world seemed more vibrant, the air fresher. "Already," Hannah mentioned casually. "Ready to take you wherever you need to go, Miss Lambert." Behind us, Rose gasped in disbelief. "You're the daughter of—" She didn't need to finish. The truth was apparent. Robert, finally understanding, stumbled after me. "Emma, wait. Please come back." His voice was tinged with a desperation I never thought possible just hours before. But I continued forward, empowered by newfound strength, their apologies and pleas fading into the background. The sound of the approaching plane was a symphony of liberation, transporting me toward a future defined on my terms. The next morning, with the taste of freedom still lingering, I walked into the office of a notorious divorce attorney, a relentless shark handpicked for this very purpose. He rifled through some documents, ready to dive into the fray. A smirk spread across his face.
"Hold on a second," he said.
"It seems during your tenure at Robert's esteemed company, you orchestrated several multi-million-dollar deals. Oddly enough, there's no mention of a bonus in your contract. Is there?" A slow burn ignited in my chest. They hadn't just underestimated me. They had tried to cheat me. The lawyer, sensing my mounting fury, gave my hand a reassuring pat.
"Don't worry, my dear.
We'll secure everything you're owed. The divorce settlement, backdated bonuses, the whole lot." He kept his promise. The divorce proceedings were quick and ruthless. Robert, deflated and subdued, sat opposite me, his swagger replaced by a sullen demeanor. The judge, a stern woman unfazed by intimidation, granted me a substantial settlement, including the backdated bonuses that my ex had conveniently neglected. As I exited the courtroom, a triumphant smile adorned my face. As I passed Robert, I noticed his red-rimmed eyes and slouched posture. "Emma," he murmured, his voice a mere whisper. "Everyone's laughing at me, my friends. I miss you." He reached out, but I recoiled. His pathetic attempt only fortified my determination. "Miss me? You never truly saw me, Robert. You were too engrossed with your mother's advice to notice the woman right in front of you." He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't let him. "Here's some free advice. Next time, maybe listen more to the strong, capable woman you marry if there is a next time." The following day, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Rose's name. A scoff escaped me as she cooed with feigned affection. "Emma, darling, Robert is devastated. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him and start over?" Her audacity was astounding. I laughed heartily, the sound rising genuinely from deep within. "Forgive him? Start over? Rose, the only thing starting over is my life, and it certainly won't include either of you." Before she could spew more manipulations, I ended the conversation with a sharp, "This call is over. And by the way, your number is now blocked." With a decisive click, I hung up. The air was charged with promise as I stood at the entrance of my new foundation's office. The walls were adorned with the aspirations of budding entrepreneurs, their innovative ideas poised for support and launch. This was my new arena, and this time I was championing the good guys. Empowered by the generous settlement to make a real difference, with wise investments in my portfolio, money was the least of my worries. More importantly, the recent court case had ignited a deep well of determination within me. I was not just going to rebuild my life. I was set on helping others craft their own. The Emma Evans Foundation became my tool for fighting mediocrity, a launching pad for those brimming with talent and ambition. The foundation's inaugural day was a bustling scene of activity. Hopeful individuals streamed into the office, each carrying unique vision and a fierce determination to leave their mark on the world. Mentors moved through the crowd, offering advice and encouragement, filling the room with an electric buzz of shared purpose. Just as the day began to wind down, the office door swung open, and in walked a familiar figure that made my jaw drop. It was my father. His laughter filled the room as he saw my astonished face. "Surprised your old man can find his way around without a map?" he joked. A wave of warmth washed over me. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I exclaimed as he pulled me into a comforting hug, his familiar scent grounding me. "I thought I'd come and see how the big boss lady is running things," he winked, adding humorously, "Besides, your fancy foundation doesn't need another broke dreamer on its payroll, does it?" I laughed, the tension easing from my shoulders. "Dad, it's not about the money, it's about giving people a chance." He nodded, his gaze turning serious. "And you, sweetheart, are giving yourself a hell of a chance." A blush crept over my cheeks as I thought about my past with Robert. "I should have listened to you, Dad." He squeezed my hand, reassuringly. "Listen, sometimes you have to learn things the hard way. That's life. But what matters is you learned, and you came out on the other side stronger and wiser." He glanced around the office, his eyes twinkling with pride. "This is something special, Emma Evans. Something you built yourself. And no matter what life throws your way, remember, you've always got a home here with me." As he turned to leave, I grabbed his arm. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered, the words thick with gratitude for his unwavering support. He smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Anytime, kiddo." With a final wave, he walked out the door, leaving behind a renewed sense of purpose in me. The future might be uncertain, but armed with the lessons I've learned and the love of my family, I knew I was ready to face whatever came next.